name is Kelly Arnold, and I'd like to welcome everybody to the AIA Homes Tour. We're going to be showing the Rollingwood residence today with Lake Flato. Our architect will be Brian Como, and he has graduated from LSU in '91. He's been practicing architecture for 30 years. He's been an associate at Lake Flato for 16. His projects have won a lot of state, local, national design awards, such as his Hog Creek residence won a national AIA award and a TSA award. He was featured on 2016 AIA Homes Tour. He has a Brown residence with a TSA award and a Blue Lake residence with the National AIA award. He spent his career refining and focusing on design at the highest possible level. He pays great care and attention to detail and craft and thoroughly articulating documentation. And he likes to work with the latest technology to accomplish everything. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Brian now, but I want to thank our sponsors, Dalgleish Construction, and also Eastside Lumber and Decking. And I want to note, everybody needs to ask their questions at within Zoom in the Q&A, and please feel free to ask any and all questions during the session, and I will be the one that fields those questions to Brian. And you're also free to use the chat, but please use the Q&A portion of the Zoom for actual questions. Okay, I'm go ahead and turn it over to Brian.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Kelly.
You're welcome.
Rollingwood is an established neighborhood west of Zilker Park in Austin. It's been up and coming for a while. People are moving in and doing big renovations, additions, tear downs, and new construction. These owners approached us for just that. They bought an existing house. They wanted to tear it down and build a, quote, Lake Flato house for the two of them. So that's how the project began. As we get started, I wanted to identify the learning objectives that we'd set out to describe to you guys. The first thing we wanted to do was create privacy on a residential lot in an existing established neighborhood. We wanted to bring nature into the house and into the daily experience of the owners. They had asked for a small, modest house for the two of them. So we were going to work with small, intimate spaces, but make them feel larger than they really are and as comfortable as they can be. And we wanted to use passive strategies to make the house more comfortable, efficient, and durable. And so we'll start with some images of the site. This is the street view, which is the south elevation of the existing house that we took down. This house was oddly sited on the west side of the property. That telephone pole there on your left is the property line. So it was a little bit of an unusual siting. Typically, you would expect the house to be in the center of the property with equal side yards and a front yard and a backyard. The driveway is also situated along the west side of the property. There was also a number of really nice trees on the property that we decided to leave in place. We actually didn't take down a single tree. And then this is the east side of the property from the street. And you can see by pushing the house to the west side of the property, you get a large yard open space on the east side of the property, which is unusual and very nice. You can also see some more nice oak trees in this image. The oak on the right, we've featured in the design, and so you'll get to see that in some of the photos. This is a view looking back towards the east. There's actually a neighbor right behind those trees to the right. So this is the east open space. It's pretty unutilized and rough in this image. We wanted to bring that back to life. To the left and deep in the photo, you can see a dense tree line, which is along the edge of a dry creek bed that runs out to the lake. You can also see some rock banding in this image. we left some of that in place, and then the owner was inspired by that. And so we repurposed some of these boulders in the project. So you'll get to see that. The next image is down in the creek bed. We were inspired by this and thought that it's a pretty important space to look into from the house. It's a natural space. It's protected by easements. It'll always be there. It's very dense, and it screens the neighbors to the north from view. So that was pretty important. You can just start to see the existing house in the upper left. And here's the existing house up on the hill. So you can see the slope of the land. You can see the rock banding. You can see how dense the vegetation is, which is quite nice. The house was built in the early 70s. It had a couple of rambling additions. The owner had no interest in keeping it. He bought it specifically to take down. So that's kind of what we started with. Here's our solution. This is the current site plan. And so you can see that we basically built the house in the same position as the existing house was, which allowed us to not take any trees down. We kept the driveway in the same basic location. And then all the west walls on the house are pretty much opaque to screen views of the neighbor to the west. So we're creating privacy that way. And then the whole driveway zone on the house is where we placed all the undesirables, like gas meters, HVAC units, electrical panels, the garage door. And then we have a vegetable garden integrated into the retaining wall along the property line. We love vegetable gardens, but they're not always pretty. And then we saved all the trees on the site. So the trees on the south side of the site protect the house from views to the south neighbor and the street. The trees on the east side of the property protect us from views to the house to the east. The east lawn gives us a buffer zone to that house as well. And then the dense tree line along the creek to the north gives us privacy from all these houses on the north. You really can't see any of these houses from the property. So it feels like you're in a remote location, not in the city. One other point about creating privacy on this site was the guest room is situated here in the house on the south side on the street elevation. We lifted it up above the garage, which just gets us an additional level of privacy in that space. And then we wanted to screen views to all these other houses from inside the house. So from inside the house, you can't see any of them, even if you tried, which is nice. The next thing, we were trying to connect the house to nature and bring that into the daily experience of the owners. And so the first thing we did was we pushed the house tight to the tree line along the north. And then we glazed the entire north elevation of the house to get views into that wooded creek. And so the predominant spaces that get that view are the master suite here, the screen porch here. Those spaces are lifted above grade 4 feet to protect the roots. So we could get the house as tight to those trees as we could. And then that also affords you views into the canopies and not looking at the ground plane. The screen porch is a major space in the house to be outside in nature. It's afforded with a fireplace for year-round use. And that outdoor space connects directly to the living room through large lift slide doors here. The owner also created an amphitheater here. You start to see that in this image from the existing boulders on the site. So that's another place to get outside, and they intend to use that to host musical events and weddings and such. There's an outdoor shower, which is a real nice space for sky views off the master to the west side. And then there's a path that takes you down to a spa that's secluded in the woods. And so I'll take you back to this image to see that. So that's where the spa is, tucked down in the woods, which is quite a nice spot to get out in nature. And then up on the second floor, we have a porch off the guest room that celebrates that oak tree that I mentioned earlier. So you'll get to see that one. The next thing we wanted to do was explore ways to organize and create unique spatial relationships to make these spaces flow in and out of each other. They share volumes, trying to make a small house feel big. So we'll look at that. It's a small bedroom. I mean, it's a small house. It's 2 bedrooms, 2,400 square feet. Privacy was not a concern for the owners because it's just the 2 of them. There's no kids or anyone else in the house. So it allows us to not worry about boundaries. And so all the spaces overlap. So we'll get to see that in the sections in just a minute. And so just walking through the plan quickly, we'll show you. So the garage is on the south end. You enter the house through stairs here. The kitchen, living, dining spaces here. Those spaces, it's all an open plan. They all flow in and out of each other. The dining and living room are in a shared volume. And then this volume opens up directly into the screen porch to share space. This stone mass here with the fireplace and television is a low mass. And so it shares space over the top of it with the wine hall. The wine hall is connected to the master bedroom by a partial height barn door. Again, there's no privacy there, but we're allowed to do that for this owner. The master bath suite and the master bedroom are also one volume with a low millwork wall separating the two, so it affords more space and volume to those. And then if you go upstairs, there's a loft space that overlooks living and dining, so that space feels quite large and open. And then another half level up is a guest room that opens up into the exterior porch for the guest.
Hey, Brian, do you know the square footage of the house?
We're 2,400 square feet, and then maybe 600 in the garage and 500 with porches and exterior spaces.
Okay, somebody asked, so thank you.
Yeah, so it's a really a great size house. It's fun to work on these kinds of small projects. They just don't get so rambling and big. And then the other piece of that is the house is separated on 5 different levels, and they kind of cascade down the hill. You'll see that in the next image. So this is the section. You can see the garage here, and then guest room, guest porch spills down into the office, and then down into living, dining. Kitchen is tucked underneath the office, and then those spaces spill into the screen porch and then down to the creek. So they all just sort of stack up on one another down the hill into the creek. I mean, another sort of design idea with that was trying to give all the major spaces views down into the creek. So you can imagine standing up in the guest room or the loft, you look down the roof line through all the glazing on the north elevation, and you get views into that green space, which is really nice. We were also wanted to identify passive strategies to make the house more comfortable, efficient, and durable. The first piece of that was daylighting. So in this image, you can see lots of east-facing glazing for morning light. I had mentioned that we have partial height barn doors and millwork walls and such, and so the light spills through most of the house actually, which is nice. We have clear stories on the south side of the house to get south light. To get south light, we block that with large overhangs in the summer, and we're trying to let it in the winter. And then, you know, with this stacked section, we get natural ventilation through the house. If you imagine just the normal convection currents, heat rises through the house. It you're able to throw open the lift slide doors between the living room and the screen porch, let air in, the hot air rises through the house and exits through the lift slide doors at the guest room. Conversely, if you close all that up in the winter, the guest room is the warmest room in the house. And so the owners thought of that space as a secondary master that they can use in the winter. And then in the summer, they sleep downstairs in the normal master, which is a fun idea. The house is separated into 5 HVAC zones. So you can turn off different zones when you're not using them. So that benefits the efficiency. The owner requested a low maintenance home. And so we made some efforts in that direction. The first thing we did was the roof is metal. The predominant direction it sheds is north to the creek. We're trying to get all of the water off the site as fast as we could. There's enough, with the slope site, there's enough water issues on the surface not to deal with additional roof water. So we're running all the water off. We have large overhangs to protect the wood siding on the house. We tried to relegate any wood siding to high on the elevations protected by the wood roof overhangs. We have heavy limestone veneer on the house, which is very durable. All the exterior windows and doors are aluminum, so those are low to no maintenance. There's a little bit of metal siding on the house, which you'll see. And then inside we have mesquite blocks floors, which are very hard and durable. We have Ipe decking on the guest porch and the screen porch, which is another like forever material, let's call it. And then the finishes inside were also durable. And we like to think of these materials as timeless. We're trying not to follow trends. And so you'll see soapstone countertops, Carrara marble tops and tile, slate, just trying to keep everything timeless. And then the millwork in the house is maple, which we like because it has very minimal grain and it's sort of very anonymous and timeless as well. You don't have strong grain patterns that you might get tired of or that might be trendy. So we'll start looking at the images. And so this is a view of the house from the northeast corner. So you can see all of the north facing glazing that all focuses on the heavy wooded creek. If you look into the screen porch, you can see a stone mast that accommodates the outdoor fireplace and the television. You can see that it's not full height, so we get light spilling over the top of that into the wine hall here and into the master bedroom here. You can see the rock banding on the site that the owner brought back to life and created this. You're just kind of stepping down into this amphitheater space where the photo was taken from. You can see the heavy stone veneer, which is very durable material. And then tucked up under the overhangs, we have wood siding.
So
on a lot of.
Is that rock natural, or did he come in and add that?
He added some, but we did reuse all the rock that was on site. And then he brought some extra stone blocks from his ranch.
Wow. Okay. Thank you.
And the interesting thing is that he told me towards the end of the project that he was going to execute all of the landscape himself. And like as an architect, you're immediately scared because I've never had an owner that could actually do that and not hire a landscape architect. But honestly, he knocked it out of the park. They did a great job. It's pretty amazing. I'm still sort of amazed at what he did. And so you can see the exposed structure on the house. It's all dug for 2x members. That's a typical strategy to bring articulation to the projects. And you can see the guest porch popping off the east side over here, looking at the big oak. All the east facing glazing to let morning light in. There's operables sort of sprinkled throughout the house for natural ventilation. And then I mentioned that all the spaces get a view to either outside or to the sky. And so you can start to see that some of these odd punched windows. This one's actually in the garage. We had this idea that it would be fun to see outside when you pull in the garage in your car. So we created this linear window element there.
Hey, Brian, do you
Yes.
know the species of that wood siding?
The wood siding is Western red cedar,
Already.
and all the wood, lumber, and roof deck is Douglas fir. And the limestone is Luder's limestone. And so on the north side of the house, you can see how we lifted up the screen porch space in the master bedroom to protect the green space to the north of the creek, trying to get as close as we could without damaging trees and damaging roots. So you'll get to see that a little bit closer. So this is the the south elevation, the street elevation. And so here, that's the guest room on the second level, guest porch popping out to the right. Being up a level gives you a little bit of privacy from the street. And then you can see back down the driveway space, and that's where cars pull in. That's where HVAC units and all that undesirable stuff is. You can start to see some of the big south-facing clear stories here that filter or that let light in the master suite and in the living room. You always wonder how well these kinds of clear stories and roof overhangs work. It's hard to know if it really works as you intended, but I'll note that there's no curtains or shades on those clear stories, and the clients have never complained that it's too glary or gets too hot. So I would take that to assume that they work just fine. But they do let great light in, and they also afford really great sky views from inside the house. This is the west elevation of the garage. So you can see the wood siding, limestone there. This pop-out box on the west elevation is the vanity area in the second floor guest room / second master. Here we were trying to afford light and views out of that space without looking directly west at the neighbors. So we popped that volume out and put slivers of glass on the north and south ends of it to get light. The one thing about Western red cedar is, I mentioned before, we were trying to keep it high on the elevations protected by the overhangs. This west wall here has a little bit more cedar than the other areas of the house, and it does get hammered by the west sun. So I was at the house last week, and this is the only elevation that's experiencing a little bit of wear and tear on the siding. So we'll probably have to update the stain, every 4 or 5 years or something like that on the west side. So that's just a lesson learned that we can all learn from. So here's a view of the east side of the house. You start to get an appreciation for the open space on the east side that we preserved. Some of the existing oak trees, you can see the rock banding in the image that the owner put in along that terrace down to the creek, and then the guest porch popping out here. Another view looking back up to the guest porch from just down in the amphitheater space. This is the main entry door of the house, and so you're looking east in this image, and so you cannot see the east neighbor at all from this view. You can see all the east facing clear stories, the operable windows. At this dining space, we were trying to bring down the scale of the dining space in this tall room. So we did that with the bocce chandelier, and we're trying to call attention to the height and loftiness and slope of the roof by keeping all the lamps level, and then accentuate the height with the wires going up to the ceiling. Here's the same view, but backed up in the space in the living room, so you can start to see the kitchen. In this view, you can see all the maple millwork and the soapstone counters, which are really beautiful and timeless. They'll always be in style, I feel. You can see more of the structural articulation with the double joists and then the steel beam running across the space. We do double joists occasionally when we need to run electrical conduit between those so we can hide it In this instance, we actually have sprinkler heads that pop out of the bottom of those. And so we have water pipes in those gaps as well. But we do feel it's important to hide those kinds of elements in these projects. You can see the ingrained mesquite block floors in this image, which are beautiful and really durable. I would say that I love the black stain. It's quite beautiful, but it does show dust more than a lighter floor. So that's one thing to keep in mind too. They just need to be cleaned a little bit more often. So here's a view looking into kitchen space. Another material that we use here is just real simple matte white glass tile on the backsplash. And another view of the kitchen, stainless appliances, just low maintenance and durable and attractive. And then here is the living room space that opens up into the screen porch space beyond. You can see the density of the trees just beyond the screen line in the distance. There are two giant lift slide doors separating those two spaces that can be pushed, both doors pushed left, both doors pushed right, or both doors centered so you can circulate around them. In this image, obviously they're pushed to the right. You can see the outdoor fireplace, which allows the screen porch to be used year round. The owner didn't want to deal with wood burning logs, and so it's a gas fireplace with ceramic balls to retain and radiate heat.
So is that an enclosed porch that we're seeing there?
It's enclosed with insect screen.
Okay.
So you're outside in that space, but there is screening to keep bugs out.
Okay, that's beautiful.
Yeah, and then to your left, inside of that partial height stone mass, we have hidden an HVAC unit, and so you can see that slot grill, and just that one grill conditions the living room space. And here's another view with the door shifted in the middle, so you can imagine circulating on both sides of the couch into and out of that space. And here is the screen porch itself. So the door to your right is accessed directly into the master bedroom. You can see the density of the trees to your right. You can also see the clear stories over the top of the limestone into the master. And then the steps down into the space sort of act as bleachers for when the owner has parties for people to hang out in there along that length. The hearth is just a cantilevered steel plate. And then the floors are Ipe. Here's a view of the screen porch from outside just to show the way it's lifted above grade to protect the trees. Exiting the screen porch, you can look up into the loft office space so you can see the different levels of the house. And then in the far distance, you can see the wood siding up there is a triple barn door that slides back and forth to close off the guest room above there. And then that millwork acts as a handrail per se, or guardrail between the guest room and the loft as they're on different levels. And then you can see the clear stories up on the top right to get natural light in space. They're quite large. That's a view looking up the stairs to the office, and then up that second half run of stairs to the guest room. And so that's showing the barn doors closed, and then they open up, and they actually open up out of the frame of this view. But I don't have a photo of that. This is the loft office space with east light. Here again, you can see there's an HVAC unit tucked away in that millwork. So we're conditioning that space with that one grill. It's a very simple approach to conditioning and zoning these spaces.
Hey, Brian,
Yes.
we've got a few questions here. Can
Yeah.
you talk a bit more about how HVAC was handled, given the open decorative ceilings?
Well, the mechanical system is a 5-zone mini split heat pump system. And so we have these very small air handlers inside, tucked in the millwork. In most cases, there's not really any ducts in the house. They're all very simple. And so they all are run refrigerant lines to the exterior unit outside along the driveway. And so in this one space, literally the unit is right behind these millwork doors. We're pulling return air in at the toe kick and blowing air out at the top. And so that one grill conditions the whole office space. And so we have a similar setup I showed you guys at the living room. So there's a unit in that stone mass behind the TV that blows out into the living room. And they're metal blades on that grill. So it throws the air upwards into the loft of the space, and then the cold air would sink. If that makes sense. And then we have the same thing in the kitchen. Actually, there is a duct in the kitchen running in the top of the cabinets. And so that unit is in a small attic. And then the guest room unit is in a small attic that blows through one grill into the guest room and then back into the guest vanity area. I'll show you the master one in a minute. That one shows up in one of the slides. That one's pretty interesting too.
Thank you. And then one other question about the screened porch. Is the gutter above the screened porch open-ended?
Yes, I'm not a big fan of downspouts. They're just ugly and distracting, and they get clogged up with leaves. And so I like to do either rain chains or open spouts on this house. Since we were draining all the water to the north, to the creek downhill, you don't really have to worry about where the water goes once it leaves the spout. And so basically we have a splash block below the spouts on the north side. So it splashes water away from the house and then runs down the hill.
Okay, thank you.
So this is a view from the office looking back down into the main space. And so you just get a sense for how open and how large that volume is. And then you can see down into the creek from up here. And you can see down into the creek space from all the major spaces in the house. I apologize, I don't have an image of the guest room. Somehow we missed that with our photographer, but this is the guest vanity area, which is sized as a master, like I mentioned, so they can use this as their winter master. In here we use slate, another durable, timeless material. You can see the slot window to the right. I had mentioned when we were looking at the west elevation, how that metal wall popped out of the main mass of the house to get these windows. So we have those on both sides to let light in the space. So here's the tub space, which gets natural light. That one window is frosted because it looks right out at the street. So we want to afford a little bit of privacy there. Here's the guest porch, which is on the front elevation. And it's really a celebration of this one oak tree that I pointed out early in the project when we were looking at the existing house photos. It's all the same materials: Doug fir, Western red cedar, Luder's limestone, and Ipe deck.
And another question, what is the flooring in that dining room?
I'm not sure what you mean. Where is it? Or
oh, sorry. What is the flooring in the dining room? What material?
The flooring in the dining room it's ingrained mesquite block. So if you can imagine cutting a mesquite tree such that you can see the rings in the wood after you cut it, and you make like 4 by 6 inch blocks, and then those glue down to the floor such that the rings face up and you could see them. Does that make sense? I can back up and look at that if you want. I don't have it.
And then
you can maybe start to see it in these images. I mean, it's a dark stain, so it's a subtle finish in the photos, but when you're there, you can appreciate it a little bit more. I mean, you can see the pattern of the blocks here.
And also, what is the material of the outdoor fireplace?
The outdoor fireplace, the surround is Luther's limestone, but it's honed instead of chopped like the exterior elevation, just for a little bit more refined finish inside. The inside of the firebox is lined with fire brick painted black. And then the balls inside the fireplace are ceramic, and they're just sort of decorative. The owner didn't want to burn wood in there. He didn't want to deal with ashes and all that sort of maintenance. I'm not a fan of fake log sets, and so we did those ceramic balls, which sort of heat up and retain the heat and radiate the heat into the space.
I'd never seen those. I think those look really cool. I've never seen ceramic balls.
Yeah, I was actually nervous about it. I couldn't decide if it was cool or if it was cheesy. So we went with it, and because they're loose, you could always change it if you didn't like it. So it wasn't really that risky, but I think they're fun.
They're very cool. So I have another question. Was there a functional reason that all the steel beams appear to be double C channels as opposed to I-beam? Or
yeah, that's a great question. We're just trying to get a little bit of a thermal break between inside and out. So we have a 3/4 inch gap. Like up here in this view, that double steel channel runs through the top of that wall. Glazing comes up and tucks to the bottom of it, but the steel beam is visible inside and out. So that 3/4 of an inch gap gives us a little space for insulation, just so that beam is not hot or cold on the inside from the exterior weather. It's minimal, but it does help when you start thinking about condensation and such. That little bit does help. And so we did that same technique on the columns. You can see this columns. I mean, this one is outside, but they're all doubled through the house.
Okay, thank you.
So that's a great question. That's a view of the porch from outside at the guest room that really just wants to celebrate that oak tree on the property. Here's a view. You're actually in the master bedroom now. You sort of walked around the corner of the stone mast from the living room. And so you're looking back to the wine hall from the master. So this was just a fun wine rack we got to design for the owner. He's into wine. And so this sort of celebrates his collection. It's all steel. It's fabricated by Steelhouse in town. Incidentally, that open space on the left side where the wine glasses are, there's a perforated metal screen back in there. That is where the return air pulls into that stone mast where the HVAC unit is. And then when you need to change the filter, you actually have to crawl inside of this opening to change the filter. It's not the most efficient, but we do like to hide return air grills and such, and just make better projects, prettier projects, I'd say. And so on the right here, you can see the barn door that closes off the master. So again, with 2 people in the house, you don't have to worry about privacy. So there's no real door on it. The barn door doesn't seal, and it doesn't go full height to the ceiling either. So it makes the spaces feel really open and airy and breathable. So here you're in the master bedroom, and you really feel like you're in the woods. I mean, the trees are right on the other side of the glass. It's quite a serene space to be in. And you can see the partial height millwork there on the left is a headboard. Oops. And then
I've got 2 questions for you. That last picture of the sort of wine nook, you mentioned it's the return grill. Is there sort of slats at the back? This is just my personal question.
No, there's a steel plate. You can't see it in the image. It's sort of tucked into this. It's sort of tucked back into that opening, maybe a foot or 2. And it's just a perforated steel plate.
Okay.
So it has a bunch of round holes in it.
And then also someone Oren asked, with 5 HVAC zones, do you have 5 thermostats, or is the system set up for group adjustments?
No, there's 5 thermostats.
Okay.
So they all function separately. And so if you're not if you're not using your office space, you can cut the AC down. If you're not using your second floor master, you can cut the AC down. And then really you're just running the living zone, the kitchen zone, and the master bedroom zone. That makes sense. So you can dial it in to the efficiency level that you want, depending on what season it is and how many people are in the house. It's a common strategy in a lot of the works. I mean, a lot of these projects, we tend to expose structure, and we do a lot of vaulted spaces, and so we don't leave ourselves lots of room for ducts and traditional HVAC systems and attics and such. And so, and it's very efficient. So we kind of roll with it.
Thank you.
And so here you are in the master, you're looking back towards the west. Creek's on your right, and so the master vanity is behind that millwork wall. Again, the millwork wall is partial height, so you get light and air spilling over that to connect the two spaces. And then way in the top left corner, you can start to see one of the big clear stories. In this scenario, in the master, the HVAC unit is actually behind the headboard. It's actually right here. And it blows air out of the top, and then the bed is built in, and so we have a slot around the bottom of the bed as a toe kick, and so return air is pulled in underneath the bed in that slot, underneath the bed all the way back into this wall and back to the unit. So it's pretty integrated. You don't even know it's there. The one thing I will say, I got a call from the owner during construction, and he was flipping out on me. He had just realized that we had located the HVAC unit right behind his headboard. And he was telling me that we need to enclose the lifted master underbelly as a crawl space and move the unit underneath the house. And so I was flipping out. We were all flipping out. That would have sort of destroyed the way the house works on the north end. So I called the mechanical design build sub that we used on this project, Ray Butler with Southwest Mechanical. And he assured me that we wouldn't hear it. The owner was he just was insisting that he was going to hear that laying in bed at night when everything's quiet. And so Ray assured us that we would insulate that cabinet and seal the doors up and you'd never hear it. And the owner was trusting enough to let us try it. And so we did, and he's never complained. So it works. And so that's an interesting lesson. These kinds of mini split units are super efficient and quiet. They're the Mitsubishi series that we use on all of the projects.
That's awesome. That's so cool.
It's one of those moments as an architect where you get really nervous and you could have a real problem on your hands. I mean, if that didn't work and it did make noise, or he could hear it clicking on and off at night, we would have had a real problem. So it's a testament to having good subs that you're working with that you can trust. Because I'm not qualified to know if those units are going to be loud or not. So this is around the corner outside, just looking back at that window in the corner we were just looking at, showing the articulation of that space as it floats above green space, looking down the creek. You can see how close we are to that one tree right there in the corner.
Brian, this image shows that overhang. Do you have a rule of thumb for determining overhang depth?
No, I really don't. I'll make it as big as it needs to be pretty, which usually makes it very protective. At some point they can look really stubby and awkward. And then, if you make it too long, then it just looks weird and forced. And so you try to find a happy medium. But the structure on these projects is typically very rigorous. And so you're sort of following the pattern of the rigor. And so here we have rafters at 2 feet on center. They center right on the wall, and then the next one's 2 feet out, the next one's 2 feet out. So you're at 4 feet. And then the roof deck, we like to cantilever that out over that last rafter as much as we can before it starts to feel like it's going to sag. And so you might have 8 more inches there.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and with that, you've got to have a good engineer on your team. We were working with Jack Harrison the structural design consulting on this project. I did a number of projects with him. He's since retired, but he was really fun and easy to work with. So this is back in the master vanity area, the master closet on your right, just looking down into the creek space. The vanity base is all steel plate, so it's super hard and durable material. We have Carrara marble in this space, which is another sort of timeless material. The owner actually had requested, as a strange request from a client, that he said that he had LASIK surgery and he gets halos and in his eyesight. And so he requested that we don't have any exposed bulbs in the house. So you can see these are frosted. So that was a typical strategy through the house. The one thing I missed was the pendants in the kitchen are not frosted. And so I expected him to one day take those out. He hasn't done it yet, so maybe they're not that bad for him. And so this is the master shower, just a real simple, serene space. I show it just to talk about, durable, timeless materials. It's all Carrara. It's really simple. And then on the other side of the master, we have the outdoor shower. It's all chopped limestone blocks. These are all solid blocks stacked up. So you get really great outdoor experience with sky and tree views out of that space. There's a barn door behind you in this image, which takes you back outside on the west side of the house. And so that's just after exiting the outdoor shower, walking down the hill a few steps, looking back at the master and the guest room. And the path you're standing on that continues down behind you takes you down to the spa. And so this is an image from the spa space that's kind of secluded in the woods, looking back up at the house, lit up at night. You can see that barn door here back into the master outdoor shower. So yeah, there you have it. That's the Rollingwood house. And just to thank some sponsors again, the title sponsor of the tour this year, Established Construction Company. Our gold sponsor for the Rollingwood house was Eastside Lumber. Our silver sponsors on the house were Ferguson. They do all the plumbing fixtures. Rainer's Aluminum did all the exterior windows and doors. Alpha Granite did all the countertops. Our bronze sponsors are Schoberg Homes. Those are great guys to work with. And then Square Foot Solutions was the project manager on the project. Lake Flato project team was Ted Flato, myself, Evan Morris, Tyrese, and Cody Knott. So I can't take all the credit, of course. It always takes a team of great people to do projects like this. So kudos to the team.
I've got two more questions and then we will wrap up. But does the Carrara require extra maintenance?
No, not at all. Now, in a bathroom, no, I don't believe it does. If you used it in a kitchen and you got lemon juice on it, you're going to etch it and you're going to have problems with it. So, if you're going to use marble in a kitchen, you have to be super careful. You might want to put a super durable sealer on it. But in a bathroom, no, seems just fine.
And then I think you might have answered this, but I just want to ask to be sure. What is the interior wall stone material?
The interior wall stone is Luder's limestone, but it's a honed finish, so it's smooth instead of chopped rough like the exterior stone. Okay. And there we're just trying to get a little bit more refinement and having that rough chopped stone inside your house that you might brush up against.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you so much, Brian. This was a great session. And then do you have anything else to say before I wrap it up?
No, that's it. Thanks for tuning in. I hope you guys enjoyed the house.
Oh, wait, I'm sorry. I have two more questions. Was there a purpose or reason for using a metal roof on this house?
Just durability. metal is the one roofing material that will last longer than asphalt roof or any other kind of roofs. So yeah, we do metal roofs a lot. This specific one is paint grip metal. And if I could describe that to you, that's actually, it's a coated steel. It's steel that's been treated in a phosphate bath that gives it it reacts with the steel, gives it a nice, real matte gray finish. It looks like a zinc finish, so it's real matte gray and handsome, but it's, like a third the price or something like that than zinc. And so it's really, it's called paint grip because it's meant to be painted. So if you went and bought a red metal roof somewhere, it would be paint grip metal that's painted red, obviously. We just expose the paint grip because we think it's beautiful. And in a Texas climate that's hot and dry, you can get away with it. If you tried to use that, in a wet environment, it wouldn't last as long. You would have rust issues. So we use that in Texas, and you'd use that in Arizona maybe, but not many other places, I don't think.
Great. Okay, well, did you have anything else you wanted to add, Brian?
No, just thanks for tuning in.
Yes, thanks, everybody.